All right, welcome to lesson 2. So this one is the angle sum of triangles. You're going to see the phrase angle sum a lot in this topic, particularly in the second half, actually right through it, to be honest. Angle sum refers to what all of the angles add up to. And for triangles, it's really simple. This is one that you're actually going to have to just remember. The triangles, as we know, they've got 3 angles. Here I actually drew up a triangle and measured 3 angles. They're listed below in the diagram. If you add up these 3 angles, get your calculator out, put it in, you'll see that it comes to exactly 180 degrees. Now, this just isn't a coincidence. All triangles will do this. Just to show you another example, again, I drew up a different one. This one here appears to be, definitely obtuse angled triangle. Completely different triangle I just randomly drew up, measured the angles as best I could, and we're going to add them up together. And again, if you add these 3 numbers together, not surprisingly, it comes out yet again to 180 degrees. The angle sum of any triangle will always be 180 degrees. You're going to see why we need to know this number when we actually get to the examples in a couple minutes. But yeah, the one thing you're going to need to remember from this topic, and you're going to need this number right throughout the entire rest of the topic, is the angle sum of a triangle is 180 degrees. Now, why is that? You don't need to just sort of, believe these 2. These might be the only 2 triangles in existence that add up to 180. Maybe I'm lying to you. There's certainly nothing stopping you from getting out a ruler and protractor, drawing up some more triangles yourself, and actually measuring those angles, adding them together. And if you do it accurately, I can assure you it doesn't matter what triangle you draw, those 3 angles will add up to 180. Now, if we were in an actual classroom, and if you had myself or, if you had another maths teacher at some point in your life, you've probably seen this demonstration done before, where they take themselves a triangle, as you can see over here, and they legitimately either cut or rip up the angles, and they stick the 3 angles together. They place them right next to each other, and when you do that, you can see it actually ends up forming, when the 3 angles of a triangle placed together, they actually end up forming a straight angle, again demonstrating that's 180 degrees. And typically, the teacher will get like everyone in the class to draw up their own triangle, so they're all a little bit different, and no matter what triangle it is, whether they do acute, right-angled, or obtuse angled, it won't matter. Everyone, if they do it neatly, will always end up with a straight angle, at least showing that, the angle sum of a triangle is 180 degrees. But anyway, we're not going to do that here. You can do it yourself if you want at home, just to validate the idea, but most people don't particularly care. They just want to know what they need to know to be able to get the marks in the exam. And all you're going to need to remember at this point is triangle, the 3 angles will add up to 180. Now let's see where we actually need that for questions. So we've got a couple examples here. These are the types of questions you might find in an exam. For this first one, it's just asking us to find the value of the x. So as you can see, x here is this angle down the bottom. We're trying to find the size of this angle. And what are we going to do? Well, our first step is to use that geometry fact we've just learnt, that the angle sum of a triangle is 180. That means that this angle, x, plus this angle here, plus this angle, because it's a triangle, the 3 angles will add up and equal 180 degrees. This is us using our geometry. What we've actually formed here is an equation. That's, the reason why equations was the topic we did before geometry, because, hey, if you were ever doing those equations wondering, when is this ever going to be useful, welcome to the very next topic, geometry, where they are. So we know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. That's what we've written out here in our first line. This actually happens to be an equation, but before we go ahead and solve it, I suggest you simplify that equation. If you look right here, we've got 55 plus 60. I would actually just take a moment just to simplify this equation. It's just going to make the solving of it a little bit easier. Anyway, when we add them together, 55 plus 60 is 115. And now that we've simplified our equation, we're then going to solve it. And you solve it just like you did in the previous topic. We've got a plus 115 here we want to get rid of, so we can work out what x is equal to. How do you get rid of a plus 115? We're going to minus. So we've got 180, take away 115, and you're going to end up with your answer of 65 degrees, right? So we use geometry to create the equation. That's the top line there. We simplify the equation, and then from that point onwards, sometimes we end up with a 2 or maybe a 3-step equation. In this case, we only need a 1-step. But the final part is once you've simplified that equation, you then solve it just using the normal techniques that you learnt in the previous topic, right? So if you're not sure about your equation solving, maybe you never learnt that topic properly, you will need to go back, maybe look at other YouTube videos. You need to be able to solve equations to get through the majority of this geometry topic, to be honest. All right, anyway, so that's the first one. As we can see, that angle there was 65 degrees. Actually happened to be the largest of the three. All right, next example. So again, we're still trying to find the value of this x. Here we can see we have a 90 degrees at the top, right, given by this square there. We actually have an isosceles triangle. Notice how this side is equal to this side. That also means that this angle here is also going to be equal to this angle down here. So if that is x, this angle over here will also be x. All right, so we're using our geometry to set it up. Let's get our equation. Because this is a triangle, we know that the three angles, x plus 90, these three angles will add up and equal 180 degrees. Okay, so we've used our geometry to create our equation. Now let's go ahead and simplify it. All right, here we have x plus x. We've got two lots of x here. How do we write that? 2x plus 90 is equal to 180. So we used geometry to create the equation. We've now simplified the equation down, so now it's ready to be solved. And from this point here, you just enter equation solving mode and just solve it just like you always have solved equations. Let's get rid of the plus 90 by minusing 90, right? Remember to always do the inverse operation. How do you get rid of a plus 90? We need to minus 90. So we go 180 minus 90. That leaves us with a 90 here. Now we've got 2x is equal to 90. That's two lots of x, or 2 times x. How do you get rid of a times by 2? We divide by 2, so 90 divided by 2. We end up with 45 degrees. And there we have it. We have found the size of our value x. That angle there, funnily enough, also this one here, happen to both be 45 degrees in size. All right, third example. So this one here is a little bit harder, right? We're slowly increasing the difficulty. For this one here, you'll notice there's actually, again, like the other one, there's two different angles whose values we don't know. This first angle here, I'm talking about this one up here, I don't know the size of it. You know, none of us do, right? It's just called x, right? We've got this unknown angle. We don't know the size of it. We're just going to call it x. We've got this other little one down the bottom, which we do know the size of. That's 20 degrees. That's the only angle whose size we know. And if you look at the big angle here, again, we don't know the size of it, but we do know that its size is 3x, or in other words, 3 lots of x. In other words, it's 3 times larger than this top first one that we looked at. All right, so this is the question of the triangle that we're dealing with. How are we going to do it? Well, the same way we've done the first two. We use our geometry to create an equation. So we know that triangles have an angle sum of 180. That means that this angle plus this angle plus this angle, it doesn't matter what order you add them up. I'm just picking an angle and going clockwise, to be honest. These three angles, when you add them together, will equal 180 degrees. That's pretty much the extent of our geometry that was needed for the question. So we've created an equation by using our geometry. We're now going to use our algebra skills to simplify the equation a little bit before we attempt to solve it, just to make the solving easier for us. So before I start minusing 20 or doing anything like that, just take a step just to relax and simplify it down, make it as easy as possible. Here I can see we have an x plus 3x. In total, we actually have 4 lots of x. The plus 20 is still there, and the whole thing is equal to 180. So I've used my algebra skills just to simplify the equation before I go ahead and solve. Now that I've done that, so we've created the equation, top line. We've used our algebra skills just to simplify it down to make it as easy as possible. And now we're going to use our equation skills and solve this equation. Let's get rid of that plus 20. So we're going to minus 20. So we end up with 160 over here, right? That was 180, take away the 20. So now we're left with 4 lots of x is equal to 160. Let's get rid of that 4. Remember, 4x means 4 lots of x, or in other words, 4 times x. How do we get rid of a times by 4? We're going to divide by 4. 160 divided by 4, right? You're allowed to use a calculator if you're hating your divisions, and you end up with the 40 degrees. So we've found the value of x. That first angle we were talking about, the top one, that's actually 40 degrees, right? That was x. And not that the question asked us to do it, but we now know the size of this other big angle down the bottom here. It was 3 lots of x, or in other words, 3 lots of 40. That big angle there was actually 120 degrees in size, just out of curiosity. All right, one final example. This is our challenge example. What makes this one kind of fun is we don't know the size of any of the angles, and yet using mathematics, we're able to find the size of every angle from knowing none of them to begin with. So we've got these 3 angles. This bottom right one here, again, I don't know the size of it. We're calling it x. The next one along clockwise, the bottom left here, again, we don't know the size of that. All we know is it's 21 degrees larger than the first. It's x plus 21. And the biggest angle of all is this top one. It is that original x value plus an extra 30 degrees. So that's the biggest of the 3 angles. Now, how are we going to find the size of each angle? Well, the same way we've been doing all of them, we're going to need to work out what the value of x is. So let's use our geometry. This is a triangle. So what do the 3 angles add up to? So we know that the first angle, I'm starting the top one now for some reason, this first angle plus the second angle, which is x, plus the third angle, which was an x plus 21. It may look a little confusing here, but this is just one angle plus the second angle plus the third angle. The 3 angles of a triangle will always add up to, right? Remember, what do the 3 angles of a triangle add up to, right? They always add up to, you can see it, 180 degrees. So since this shape is a triangle, we know 1, 2, 3, the 3 angles add up to 180 degrees. All right, so that's the extent of our geometry. We've used our geometry to create an equation. Now we're going to go ahead and use our algebra skills to simplify it a little bit. Solving this equation as it is would be quite tricky, but we simplify it, we can make it a bit easier for ourselves. How many x's do we have in total? There's 1, 2, 3. We have 3 lots of x. And then you'll see that we have a plus 30 and a plus 21. 30 plus 21. We could just simplify and rewrite that as plus 51, right? 30 plus 21 is 51. And that's still equal to 180 degrees. So I haven't done any solving yet. I just simplified that equation down just to make it look a little neater. We had 3 lots of x, which I wrote as 3x, and we had a 30 plus 21. So instead of having them as separate, I just combined them and made it a plus 51. Hopefully that makes sense. So now we've simplified the equation, we can now just go ahead and solve it. How do you get rid of a plus 51? Right, do the inverse. We need to minus by 51. So we're going to go 180, take away 51, type it in your calculator, use your head, whatever it happens to be. You should end up with 129. All right, so that's looking good so far. Final step for, our first part, at least finding the value of x. We've got 3 lots of x. So again, we've got to divide by 3. So we're going to go 129 divided by 3. If you've got a calculator, just type it into that. But it's not too bad either way. 43 degrees. So we've been asked to find for this challenge example the size of each angle. Well, we've got the size of the smallest angle. This angle right here, 43 degrees. That's the value of x. And to finish off our question is not too bad. To find the size of the remaining 2 angles, well, we know what the value of x is. So this second angle here, this one down here, is just that x, which is 43 plus 21. So 43 plus 21, you end up with 64 degrees for that angle there. And the top one is just that x value, which is 43 plus 30. 43 plus 30, you end up with 73 degrees. We have successfully found the size of all 3 angles just by, I shouldn't say just by, we've ultimately combined 3 different math skills: geometry, algebra, and equation solving to finish it off. So there's like 3 different topics all coming together to complete that question there, making it a pretty cool question, I think, overall. Right, if you need to go back and re-look through these examples, do it now, because I'm about to flip over to the next page, which is some questions for you guys to do yourselves. So hopefully you've got your book, you got your pen, you got your calculator ready, because now it's your turn. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to get you to find the size of all the missing angles. The first couple triangles, you'll see there's only 1 missing angle. And then we move on to ones where there's 2 missing angles. And the final one is another one where you don't know the size of any of those angles, but we can still work them out. So find the size of all the missing angles. I'm going to get you to pause the video here, copy down these questions, have a go at answering them all. Once you've got answers for all, you can unpause the video to get solutions. Alright, so for this first one, hopefully you ended up with what would have been 50 degrees for the first one. The second one, creating your equations, simplifying and solving, what is that, 95? You should have ended up getting 85 degrees for this second one. This one here, again, the questions ask us to find the size of all the missing angles, so we're going to need to give both. So in this particular case, you should have ended up with, as an equation, 2 lots of x plus, what is that, 66 is equal to 180. giving you 2x is equal to 114 degrees. Okay, so you end up with, in this case, 57 degrees should have been the value of this angle down here. And the top angle here, which is also missing, is in this case, well, we now know, is 57 plus 41. So you should have ended up with, what is that, 98 degrees for that top one, which it did look obtuse, so I'm pretty glad that it ended up being over 90 degrees. All right, and the final question here, this one, like every single textbook you ever open up, you get to this part, and this question always seems to be in them. You should have ended up with, in the end, 6 lots of x equal to 180. Dividing by 6, 30 degrees is the size of this angle down here. This one down the bottom, this big one, is 3x, or in other words, 3 lots of x. And since we know x is 30, it's 3 lots of 30. That's a 90 degree or right angle down there. And the top one was 2 lots of 30. You should have had 60 degrees for the top one. And hopefully you got those answers correct. If not, go back, re-look through whatever examples you need to do. Come back, have a go at these questions. If you want additional questions, you can just create your own triangles, put in different values. Maybe if you want more basic ones, put down the value of 2 angles and then, just find the missing third angle. You can make harder ones as well if you want. They're pretty fun. And yeah, like I'm saying, not only are you practicing your geometry skills, but you're getting, lots of practice in a couple other topics as well. Anyway, thanks heaps for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out the new merch, which is coming out. But yeah, we'll move on to the third lesson after this, where we're going to be looking at, we've gone from the angle sum of triangles to the angle sum of quadrilaterals. Super cool, very similar. I guess they're fun questions. We'll move on to that in a sec. So we'll leave it here, and I'll see you when you're ready for your third lesson in geometry.